Eliana Lyle, do you have a death wish? Shane Southwell's voice was deep. His handsome face appeared particularly chilling under the chandelier, and the murderous intent in his dark eyes was unmistakable. His distinctly jointed hand clutched a crystal-clear vase, seemingly ready to smash it onto Eliana Lyle's forehead at any moment. Eliana lay on the ground, her ears ringing, her face still stinging painfully from the slap she just received from the man. Her lower abdomen had collided with the corner of the sofa, and the dull pain made it difficult for her to endure. Even her voice trembled. Eliana shook her head. No, I didn't. The butler stood cautiously to the side, occasionally lowering his gaze to sneak a glance at Eliana. No one in this house dared to speak for the young mistress who had made a mistake, and all the servants uniformly bowed their heads silently. The chandelier in the living room was so bright it hurt the eyes. Eliana cautiously lifted her head, sweat beading on her forehead and dampening her bangs. Her almond-shaped eyes were filled with fear. Seeing the man say nothing, she tried to shake her head and struggled to raise half her body, stammering in explanation. I didn't hurt her. She called me to her house. She said there's something from you for me. Just this morning, Eliner Lyad had called Eliana. On the other end, Eliner said she decided to let go of Shane Southwell, saying she had something of Shane's to return to her, asking her to come and get it. Eliner was Shane's first love and the object of her jealousy. She knew Shane loved Eliner and knew she couldn't compare to Eliner. She admitted she felt happy when Eliner said she wanted to let go. But later, when Eliner got hurt, she knew nothing about it. She absolutely didn't have the courage to hurt Eliner. Ha, you say you didn't, so you did. The man's eyes were chillingly cold, as if looking at someone about to die. Such a gaze made Eliana's spine shiver. Really, I didn't. Husband, I didn't. Suddenly, Eliana felt a piercing pain in her belly, clutching her abdomen. Her voice became as soft as a mosquito's. My stomach hurts. I hurt. Hurt? Ha, do you hurt more than Eliner? Shane Southwell sneered, his gaze turning sinister and truly threw the vase at Eliana. Eliana instinctively reached out to block it, her pale hand immediately bruised. The vase ricocheted off, landing on the ground with a buzzing sound. No, I only went today. Eliana braced against the pain, lifted her chin to look up at Shane, wanting to explain, but hesitated under Shane's intimidating gaze, too scared to speak. She had gone to Eliner's house today, took nothing, was mocked by Eliner, and then was chased away. Shane Southwell stared intently at the person on the ground, gritting his teeth with hatred, his handsome face distorted with anger. He hated this woman who looked pitiful, wished he could kill her now. If not for Eliana's family's wealth, he wouldn't have married her. The muffled sound of thunder outside broke the current stalemate. Shane Southwell slowly exhaled, turning his back to Eliana, his voice exceptionally indifferent. Eliner needs peace and quiet, you get out. Wah, what? Eliana shook her head tremblingly, her mouth too dry to speak. Why? Don't make me say it a second time. Get out. No, I didn't. I really didn't. Please believe me. At this moment, the physical pain paled in comparison to the coldness of Shane's words. The man went upstairs resolutely without a moment's hesitation. Eliner had been brought back long ago. She was upstairs now. Believe me. I'm begging you to believe me. Eliana propped herself up with her hands, trying to crawl over to beg the man, but was stopped by the butler. Madam, let me help you up, the butler said as he helped Eliana up from the ground, though helping might as well have been forcibly pulling her up. Shane Southwell, I didn't. Eliana used her last ounce of strength to explain, but appeared so weak and powerless in front of everyone. The butler looked at Eliana, somewhat disdainfully said, Madam, the young master asked you to leave. Please don't make it difficult for us. Just as she was pushed out the door, she heard the heavy sound of the door closing behind her. Eliana stood dazedly, her feet like they were nailed to the ground, like a withered tree, her face as pale as paper. After a long time, she struggled to move her feet, as heavy as lead, her stumbling footsteps appearing shaky in the gust of wind. Living in this house for 3 years, this wasn't the first time Shane Southwell had driven her out. She turned her head to look at the flower bed in the distance, where a Volkswagen was parked. She didn't know who owned the car, but almost every time she was driven out, she would see it. Whenever the car wasn't there, it was always followed by the man coming, every time when she had been humiliated. He would look at her grimly, silently, as if watching her joke. Yet tonight, this car was there. Which meant that man probably wouldn't be coming to watch her debacle. Should she laugh that such a pathetic state wasn't seen by anyone? At that moment, a strong wind blew, making Eliana stagger. Even the heavens seemed to bully her. Facing the torrential rain, Eliana walked aimlessly forward. She held back her tears this time. She wouldn't squat at the door like a dog begging Shane Southwell to let her in. To speak of it, she was like a stray dog. Her parents died in a car accident. Their estate fell to her so. She could only cling tightly to Shane Southwell. Married for 3 years, Shane Southwell never touched her, at first saying she was unwell, always giving her supplements. But she grew weaker and weaker. She knew. It turned out Alina was telling the truth. Eliana, oh Eliana, Shane Southwell never gave you a second glance before. Why did you believe he loved you? That's why he married you. The voice was drowned by wind and rain. Even she couldn't hear it clearly. Not knowing how long she walked, she just felt all-encompassing darkness swallow everything before her. A pallid figure like pear blossoms fell on the side of the road. The fragile life seemed like a trickle, slowly dissipating from her body, as if a stick of sandalwood continuously blown is rapidly reduced to ashes. In the haziness, there was the sound of screeching brakes. Someone ran over. Eliana felt someone pick her up. The movements were so cautious. A summer scent filled her nose. She could feel the person's tremble, feel the drops of warmth spreading on her cold cheeks. This embrace was so warm, Eliana instinctively wanted to hide in it, but she didn't have the strength to lift her hand. Eliana, don't be afraid, I'll take you home, I'll never let go again. Eliana always thought Norman Bennett came just to watch her fail, always wore a cold face, never smiled at her, sometimes forcibly taking her away. She never heard Norman speak with such tension, fear. She wanted so much to open her eyes and see him again, but her almond eyes opened and closed, unable to see the face before her. Gradually, the pain ebbed, the jade-white wrist slumping down. The man watched helplessly as that vibrant life disappeared from his embrace. At this moment, the man holding Eliana in the storm rain became at a loss. No, don't that trembling voice filled with heartbroken grief. Miss Lyle, it's Lana. I've brought your breakfast. On the soft bed inside nestled a petite figure. She frowned slightly, seemingly displeased with the noise outside. After several knocks, the person on the bed finally woke up. As she opened her sleepy eyes, what she saw first was the mushroom lamp on the bedside table, under which a white rabbit was hugging a carrot. Miss Lyle, are you awake? May I come in? The clear and gentle voice from outside brought Eliana Lyle back to reality. It sounded like Lana, and this was Norman Bennett's villa. Eliana woke up almost instantly, abruptly throwing off the quilt. She was wearing white pajamas with rabbit ears and hurriedly reached for the phone on the bedside table. Could it be that Norman brought her back to the Bennett family? She opened her phone, and the date and time appeared before her eyes. 2019. She had gone back 3 years. Memories from the past flooded her mind. Eliana remembered that at this time, she was forced by her parents to come to the Bennett family to get along well with Norman Bennett, to whom she was betrothed. Back then, she extremely disliked Norman Bennett, even hated him. After coming to this villa, she locked herself in, and Norman, knowing she disliked him, never disturbed her. Miss Lyle, it's Lana, may I come in? Lana patiently knocked on the door from outside, repeating her words over and over. It seemed to be her daily task ever since Eliana arrived. She was still being called outside. Eliana got out of bed and ran barefoot to open the door. Seeing her, Lana's face, both beautiful and gentle, carried a hint of a smile. Dressed in a uniform light green short-sleeve top and gray wide-leg pants, Lana looked quite amiable. "Good morning, Miss Lyle." Lana always smiled with her eyes curved. Eliana liked this girl from the bottom of her heart, perhaps because of Norman. That care Lana showed was so thoughtful. "Morning," Eliana smiled at Lana, a somewhat bitter smile. She realized she hadn't smiled in so long and felt a bit unaccustomed. Holding a bowl of wontons, Lana was somewhat surprised. Even her smile froze. Eliana had almost never shown her a friendly face, let alone greeted her, both startling and surprising Lana. Through Lana, Eliana saw the redwood railing behind her. She bit her lip as if making a decision and exhaled. After seemingly preparing herself psychologically, she carefully tiptoed to the edge of the redwood railing, holding onto it while looking down. As expected, Norman Bennett was sitting on the sofa there. He was in a black bespoke suit, meticulous, without a single crease. Long legs crossed, left hand holding a cup of coffee, and the right hand browsing something on a laptop. At this moment, Norman Bennett sensed something unusual, feeling a burning gaze on him. When he looked up to the direction of the gaze, they unexpectedly locked eyes. On Norman Bennett's handsome face, his features were well-defined and sharp, with striking eyebrows under which shone eyes bright as stars, deep like a cold pool. "Morning, you're up." Norman Bennett's face was expressionless. His greeting to Eliana had a distant, indifferent tone, deep and magnetic. At this moment, Eliana couldn't hold back anymore. Her hands released the railing. Her hair swung, forming an arc as she turned and ran toward the redwood staircase, the sound of her hurried footsteps echoing, showing her urgency. Eliana's heart was racing. She was eager to get closer to him. Sitting on the leather sofa, Norman Bennett's brow furrowed slightly. His pupils dilated. He put down his cup and quickly stood up, striding to the staircase in a few steps. And in that moment, Eliana crashed into Norman Bennett's solid chest. As she caught a whiff of that familiar, elegant lotus fragrance, Eliana's eyes reddened. Sour tears burst forth, like strands of lingering thread wrapping around the person before her. In the past, how blind had she been to ignore Norman Bennett's goodness, hurting him deeply. Eliana's teary almond eyes, even her little red lips quivered, making her appear both adorable and pitiful. Norman Bennett's heart felt as if it had been gripped, surprised, worried, and somewhat at a loss. "Why are you crying?" Instinctively, Norman Bennett wanted to reach out to pat the little girl's head, but his hand paused midair and then withdrew. The little girl in his arms said nothing, burying her face in his chest, crying harder, her small hands clutching his waist tightly, as if once released, he would run away. I'm sorry." In Eliana's heart, this was the only phrase, repeated countless times silently. She felt no matter how many times she said it, it couldn't make up for anything. This scene was witnessed by everyone inside, especially Butler Lewis and Lana, whose jaws nearly dropped in shock. Could Miss Lyle have changed her nature? She had always avoided seeing their young master, and today she initiated an embrace. The more Eliana acted this way, the more panicked Norman Bennett felt. His long, clean fingers gently patted the back of the person in his arms, glancing down to see her barefoot, peach-pink toes on the cold marble floor. Though it was midsummer, the air-conditioned room made the floor somewhat chilly. Norman Bennett could only scoop her up in his arms, his chin feeling the warmth of Eliana's head, her soft hair like silk. "Had a nightmare." Norman Bennett's voice softened significantly. "Ooh," Eliana, choking with sobs, clung to Norman Bennett's neck. She wanted to say so much, but the words were too many to find a starting point. Seeing her not speaking, only crying, Norman Bennett didn't press her, just quietly continued to stroke her back. Eliana, crying to the point of oxygen deprivation, wiped her tears on the man's neck. Glancing sideways, she noticed everyone watching them, everyone looking like spectators at a show, with mischievous smiles in their eyes. Eliana felt a bit embarrassed when suddenly she remembered something. The slight sound of her sniffing abruptly stopped. Today was July 20th, which meant it was the day her parents had their car accident. "Norman Bennett, take me home, please take me home." Eliana lifted her head from Norman Bennett's neck, her face wet with tears, even her nose tip red. She stared at Norman Bennett, a pleading look in her eyes. So, she just wanted to leave. Norman Bennett's deep eyes dimmed, glancing away, no longer looking at the person who caused him heartache, just nodding slightly, his voice betraying no emotion. "Okay, I'll take you home, but put your shoes on first." As they stepped out the door, a wave of heat hit, and a thin layer of mist formed on Eliana's forehead. She hadn't tidied herself up, still in silky rabbit pajamas, with pink bunny slippers on her feet. She was in a hurry to go back, afraid she wouldn't make it in time. All the way, sitting in the front passenger seat, Eliana picked at her fingernails, her expression tense and anxious. All of this was noted by Norman Bennett. Perhaps, he thought, he shouldn't use the betrothal agreement to bind her. Perhaps ending the engagement would make her happy, but he was reluctant to let go. This is a beautifully decorated large villa with a blend of Chinese and Western styles, hidden in the suburbs, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. At the entrance, Uncle Leo was holding some fresh flowers to go inside. He turned his head towards the iron gate upon hearing a car stop and saw a cute girl getting out of the car, realizing it was the young miss returning home. Eliana Lyle rushed inside in a hurry. Uncle Leo's friendly face broke into a smile. "Good morning, miss." "Morning, Uncle Leo." Eliana casually greeted and dashed into the house without a care. Norman Bennett hadn't gotten out of the car. Watching the petite figure disappear through the Lyle household door, he smiled wryly. Was she really in such a hurry? She even forgot her phone. At this moment, Eliana charged into the house. It seemed her parents had already finished breakfast. They were sitting on the couch, her gentle and intellectual mother flipping through a magazine, and her father, with an air of seriousness, reading the newspaper while sipping red tea. Both were stunned to see Eliana. Eliana glanced at the cabinet just by the entrance and had a sudden idea. It had all the car keys in the house. Ignoring the curious looks from everyone inside, Eliana opened the small cabinet in one swift motion. Inside, keys were neatly organized, each compartment with a label. There were keys to 7 cars in total. Apart from 4 luxury cars, the other 3 BMWs were for the butler and drivers. Watching Eliana gather all the car keys and hurriedly run upstairs, she even lost one of her bedroom slippers. "What is that girl up to this morning?" Mr. Lyle stared at the rabbit slipper on the stairs and asked, "What did she just take?" Uncle Leo quickly replied, "The young miss took the car keys." Eliana efficiently locked away all the car keys and even hid her room key in the bathroom. She couldn't let them out today. "Eliana, give me the car keys. I have a meeting to attend." Mr. Lyle's expression was slightly angry. He was truly somewhat upset, having no time to mind Eliana's early return. Standing at the door, Eliana shook her head desperately, almost about to cry. "You can't go out today." Eliana didn't know how to explain to the 2 people in front of her. She only hoped her parents wouldn't go out today, no matter what. Looking at Eliana's demeanor, she didn't seem like she was causing trouble out of willfulness. Mrs. Lyle glanced unexpectedly at Mr. Lyle, then slowly walked over to Eliana, bending slightly to ask, "What's the matter with you, girl?" "You just can't go out." Eliana spoke with rare determination, leaving no room for negotiation, which puzzled Mrs. Lyle but also led her to think of something. "Eliana, then Mom also has a condition." Mrs. Lyle smiled, but the smile seemed a bit off for Eliana. "What?" Eliana looked at her mother curiously, with a mix of anticipation and some doubts in her heart. Mrs. Lyle smiled gently, tapped her on the nose, and said directly, "We won't go out, but you have to agree to the marriage with the Bennett family." "I agree," Eliana replied almost without thinking. Everyone in the room was stunned. The young miss actually agreed. The same young miss who went on a hunger strike last month just agreed so easily today. Even Mr. Lyle, who had been frowning all along, was a bit incredulous. He clearly remembered his daughter being very resolute. Could it be that, after spending some days together, Eliana found something good about Norman Bennett? However, this was a different matter. Mr. Lyle felt somewhat dissatisfied, saying, "Many people are waiting at the company, and I—" "Old Lyle." Mrs. Lyle immediately stopped Mr. Lyle, not letting him continue, and reassured, "The meeting can be postponed. Our daughter's marriage is more important." Mrs. Lyle always cared deeply about Eliana and Norman Bennett's relationship. Years ago, Norman Bennett's mother passed away due to a heart condition. Her last wish was not being able to see the two children, promised to each other as infants, get married, which was her lifelong regret. Mrs. Lyle and Norman Bennett's mother were childhood friends, and the Lyle family and the Bennett family were old family friends, a bond as close as kin. Seeing Mr. Lyle push his glasses up, his frown unable to relax, Eliana knew her father cared most about work matters, making it difficult for him today. Not wanting her father to be caught in a bind, she had an idea and said, "Dad, when was the last time you exercised? How about you and Eliana walk to the company today, okay?" "Walk?" Mr. Lyle was noticeably surprised. It had indeed been a long time since he had exercised, always racing against time, especially after taking over the Lyle Corporation. He had been even busier. "Okay." Eliana tilted her head slightly, her bright eyes looking at the usually stern father. In the past, she was both scared and disliked him, as he always had a stern face and often admonished her. Perhaps she had been spoiled by the household's butler and other servants, so she would often throw tantrums over minor displeasures. Yet during the 3 years at the Southwell family, she was subjected to bullying, but dared not complain. Thinking of this, Eliana's gaze dimmed. At that time, she lived a miserable life, knowing full well Shane Southwell didn't like her, but still deceiving herself. "All right, let's walk. It's better to be late than not go at all," Mr. Lyle said, then turned to Mrs. Lyle. "Tell Lewis to postpone the meeting to the afternoon." Mrs. Lyle nodded, pursing her lips with a smile, and said with great relief, "You both go ahead. I have nothing urgent today, a perfect time for a break." As they stepped out, Eliana still felt slightly uneasy. She changed into a warm apricot dress, simple without any patterns, adorned only with a 6-petal pearl blossom on the chest, making her skin appear even fairer, with her slender legs not looking too thin. She placed her hands behind her back, holding them as she walked alongside Mr. Lyle, feeling this moment was surreal. She had never connected with this father before. In her childhood, her parents were both very busy, and her grandparents disapproved of her for being a girl, never showing her a pleasant face. She became increasingly spoiled, always feeling if others didn't like her, why should she like others, and so never taking the initiative to be kind, even to her family. "Eliana, focus while walking. This is the roadside. What if you get into an accident while being absent-minded?" Mr. Lyle suddenly spoke, breaking the silent atmosphere between them. Although Mr. Lyle's tone was stern, he was genuinely concerned. Were it the past, Eliana might have immediately retorted with a rebellious attitude. "All right, Tilda, then. Dad, will you hold my hand as we walk, okay?" Eliana beamed with a bright smile, extending her small hands. Eliana was petite, only 160 cm tall, appearing cute and youthful. However, both her parents were quite tall. People often speculated that Eliana was not their biological child, but she actually inherited from her uncle, who was just 158 cm, and he in turn inherited from their grandmother. "How old are you, still wanting to hold hands? That's unreasonable." Despite his words, Mr. Lyle still reached out, taking Eliana's hand. Their large, warm hands held hers for the first time like a real father-daughter bond. Eliana smiled, yet tears welled up in her eyes, discreetly wiping them away as she adjusted her bangs. The road was long, a full 7 kilometers, yet it felt so short. Half an hour later, the father and daughter arrived at the South Gate overpass. the very spot where her parents had a car accident in her past life. Eliana's hand involuntarily trembled slightly. Yet this subtle movement didn't escape Mr. Lyle's notice. He immediately let go of Eliana's hand, took off his jacket, and draped it over her, admonishing her while doing so. "When going out, you should dress more warmly. You'll only realize how hard it is once you're sick." Eliana Lyle stared blankly at the intact guardrail. In her previous life, when she arrived at the scene, the iron guardrail had been crumpled together, not broken, but her parents' car had rolled down the slope beyond the guardrail. According to the police investigation results, it was hit directly by 3 BMW X5s driving the wrong way. However, they only caught the owners of 2 cars, both claiming they were driving under the influence of alcohol, while another person named George Lyle fled the scene. In Eliana's heart, this wasn't an accident, it was murder. She still remembered George Lyle, who escaped justice, and his license plate number. Even after marrying Shane Southwell, she continued searching with the police, but after 3 years, they found nothing. "Eliana, what are you looking at?" Mr. Lyle squinted his eyes and gazed in the direction Eliana was looking. He saw the iron guardrail ordinary, nothing special. Only then did Eliana snap back to reality, turning her head and smiling at Mr. Lyle. She adjusted the clothes on her shoulders slightly and shook her head. "It's nothing." Then she wanted to check the time on her phone but realized she didn't have it. Presumably, she forgot it at home. She quickly asked, "Dad, what time is it?" 9:31, Mr. Lyle replied, looking at his watch. It seemed like everything was fine. In her previous life, the incident happened at 9 o'clock sharp. Her father was a punctual person, leaving at 8:55 every day and arriving at the South City Bridge by 9. This probably gave the culprits an opportunity. But today, no accident happened, making Eliana believe it was murder. "Are you tired, girl? Don't want to walk anymore?" Mr. Lyle rarely wore a smile, his tone amused and somewhat helpless. Perhaps it was the first time he spoke to his daughter this way. "No, let's go," Eliana said, taking 2 steps forward first to prove she could still walk. The father and daughter arrived, panting, at Xiangshan Group in the center of South City. It was an office building, and Louis Song, the assistant, was already waiting at the company entrance. Upon seeing their arrival, he quickly approached. "President, you're finally here. Did you come on foot? I've postponed your meeting, but President Wang from the Building Materials Company will be here soon to discuss cooperation," Louis Song said, noticing a delicate girl following the president, Sean Lyle. Mr. Lyle glanced back at his daughter and said to Louis Song, "Louis, arrange for someone to take my daughter out for a meal." Then Mr. Lyle sternly addressed Eliana. "Dad has to discuss business. Behave yourself, and I'll have someone take you back after lunch. Understand?" Yes, I understand." Eliana nodded feverishly. At this moment, Louis Song had already rushed to the reception desk to find a poised and elegant receptionist to take care of her. Then, he followed Sean Lyle and left. "Hello, Miss Lyle. I'm Snow Wang." Snow Wang greeted politely, introducing herself. She wore a white shirt paired with a black knee-length skirt, giving an impression of good character. Eliana nodded slightly. "Hi." With a simple greeting, Eliana didn't intend to say much to Snow Wang. She was somewhat socially anxious, not severe but lazy enough to avoid talking to strangers if she could help it. "Miss Lyle, what do you like to eat? I can recommend some restaurants," Snow Wang asked with a smile. She didn't feel that Eliana was cold. Rather, she thought the girl was easy to get along with, at least not difficult. "I don't know." Eliana really didn't know what to eat. She was too tired to have an appetite. At this moment, Snow Wang's earphone blinked. She bowed slightly to Eliana before turning to take a call. "Okay, I understand. Sure, don't worry." After speaking, Snow Wang quickly turned to Eliana. "Miss Lyle, Assistant Liu said your mother called him, saying you left your phone at President Norman's place, and he wants to meet you at South Joy Hotel." Norman Bennett. She realized she had left her phone at the Bennett family, hurrying too much to notice. An hour later, a car stopped at the entrance of South Joy Hotel. This hotel belonged to the Bennett family, a special five-star business hotel with a great location, excellent service, and beautiful environment, naturally making it quite expensive. 4 young women stood at the entrance, all with neat appearances, well made up, wearing white shirts and black trousers that gave a sense of orderly comfort. As Eliana approached within a meter of the entrance, the 4 bowed at a 45-degree angle, saying, "Welcome, please come in." Then a man came to meet her. It was Raymond Wood, Norman Bennett's assistant, dressed in a business suit, smiling respectfully. "Miss Lyle, please follow me." "All right." Eliana felt her heart beating a little faster. She remembered Norman Bennett holding her and speaking so gently, not like him at all. She always thought Norman Bennett disliked her, as he never smiled at her, his personality aloof and withdrawn, leading her in her past life to believe he was a bad person. If he didn't like her, why didn't he refuse to marry her, leaving her to resist her family's pressure alone? Now that she thought about it, apart from not smiling, Norman Bennett wasn't bad in other aspects. "Miss Lyle, we're here," Raymond Wood announced as he prepared to knock on the door for her. "Wait," Eliana stopped Raymond Wood's action and smiled. "I'll do it, you can go." Raymond Wood bowed respectfully and left with a smile without saying anything. Eliana stood at the door for a minute, her raised hand resting on it for another minute, contemplating her first words. She wanted to apologize to Norman Bennett, but feared being too abrupt. Oh well, she was just here to get her phone. As she raised her hand to knock, a cool male voice came from inside. "Come in." Upon hearing the voice, Eliana's face turned red in a flash. She hadn't even knocked, and her hand was suspended in midair. Grasping the door handle, she twisted it down, creak. The door opened in response, and a glaring light seeped through the gap. As the door pushed inward, the simple, elegant decor became clearer, as did the man sitting at the dining table looking at her. I'm not late, am I?" Eliana awkwardly smiled, hurriedly sitting opposite Norman Bennett without even closing the door. "Just on time." Norman Bennett's tone was neither warm nor cold, devoid of any emotion. Perhaps this was why Eliana felt Norman Bennett didn't like her. How could someone treat the person they liked so indifferently? "What would you like to eat?" Norman Bennett asked, handing her the menu. Norman Bennett had canceled all his plans today, leaving company matters to his deputy, all for the sake of meeting someone. Fortunately, she showed up. "I'll have a bowl of wonton soup. I don't have much of an appetite right now." Eliana genuinely wasn't hungry, but Norman Bennett perceived her words to mean something else. Eliana looked up and saw Norman Bennett staring at her intently, not speaking. His eyes were too calm, like a frozen lake, making Eliana hesitant to meet his gaze, so she diverted her eyes to the window. She wondered what Norman Bennett's gaze meant. Was it a mere illusion, or did he really dislike her? This private room is very large. Looking behind Norman Bennett, there is a resting sofa and a coffee table. However, this already large enough table made Eliana Lyle feel too close to him. It seemed so close that she could hear his breathing and smell that lotus fragrance. In fact, lotus was Eliana Lyle's favorite flower, but she never wore perfume. No matter when she encountered Norman Bennett, she always felt like summer had arrived, yet these lotus flowers seemed to bloom in winter. Where's my phone?" Eliana Lyle felt a bit uncomfortable being looked at by Norman Bennett, so she broke the silent and oppressive atmosphere first. Norman Bennett restrained his expression, gently pressing the screen menu at the edge of the table with his slender fingers, then calmly looked at Eliana Lyle and said, "Let's eat first, then. I have something to tell you." "Oh, Tilda, okay." Eliana Lyle nodded slightly, her hands clasped together, appearing a bit restrained, which was unusual as she wasn't before. After finishing a bowl of wonton, feeling the warmth in her stomach, Eliana Lyle gently blew on a soup spoon, holding her temples' stray hair with one pale, delicate hand, sipping the hot soup in small sips. Eliana Lyle's looks were exquisite. Even just sipping soup was enough to dazzle someone's eyes. All right, what's the matter? Eliana Lyle put down the spoon, having been constantly recalling what Norman Bennett had said earlier, wondering about what he wanted to say, feeling a bit expectant for a moment. Norman Bennett first returned her phone to her, then said, I know you oppose the marriage arranged by your parents. Marriage is not a game. It naturally needs to be careful, and I respect your decision. This engagement is annulled. The words annulled were almost squeezed out of Norman Bennett's mouth. He was reluctant, yet had no choice but to let go. However, Eliana Lyle's face didn't show the joy he expected. Instead, she was stunned, and the light in her eyes vanished at that moment, becoming lost and dim. Her already fair and slightly moist skin appeared pale and unbearable at this moment. Eliana Lyle never thought that Norman Bennett was going to break off the engagement with her. The hand holding the phone gradually tightened, fingertips turning red. Her nose started to tingle with soreness, and the next second, tears welled up in her eyes, looking like pearls dropping onto the table, but actually falling into someone's heart. Norman Bennett could fathom Eliana Lyle. His handsome brows slightly furrowed, contemplating for a moment, then said, You're the one who asked to cancel it, and I agreed. With Norman Bennett saying this, the sobbing Eliana burst into tears, like a child who lost her favorite doll. She blamed herself, regretted it, having personally driven away someone who loved her. She couldn't hold back the sadness inside, crying out in embarrassment. Norman Bennett really didn't know what to do with her, his gaze sharp like a stern parent scolding a child. As expected, Eliana Lyle held back, wiping her face chaotically with her hand, turning her breakdown into quiet sobbing. Do you hate me that much? This sentence was spoken so softly, it seemed only Norman Bennett could hear it, yet Eliana Lyle still caught it. Then Norman Bennett stood up, walked to Eliana Lyle's side, reverting to his usual indifference. After you've cried enough, I'll have someone take you back. As he finished speaking, Norman Bennett took long strides toward the door, intending to leave. With these words, a soft figure like a kitten wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, those red little hands trying hard to grasp. Her small face pressed against his back, warm tears soaking the suit. No, Norman Bennett, don't leave me. I don't hate you. I don't hate you. I like you. Eliana Lyle choked. Actually, from the beginning, she merely disliked others deciding her life, coincidentally meeting childhood playmate Shane Southwell again. Shane Southwell was always ambiguous with her, sometimes treating her well, sometimes ignoring her for long times. Just like wanting what you can't have, Norman Bennett's goodness was visible to her yet unappreciated. She shouldn't have the face to cry, but she really didn't want to miss him. Norman Bennett seemed as though he heard wrong, a hint of disbelief in his eyes. He slowly turned, gently lifted Eliana Lyle's small face with his fingertip, forcing her to look into his eyes. Those eyes holding strands of gentleness had countless thoughts in them, yet the expression was extremely solemn. He asked, Look at me, say it again. At this moment, Eliana Lyle looked at Norman Bennett with unusual seriousness, not fearing his gaze, those pupils reflecting her, and her alone. I like Norman Bennett. Eliana Lyle gathered the courage to confess to the man so close, clearly seeing Norman Bennett's eyes quiver lightly. She watched him, that subtly moving Adam's apple, slightly pursed thin lips, features perfectly handsome. In the next second, before Eliana Lyle could react, the man tightly embraced her. She felt him slightly bend down, lower his head, lips pressed beside her ear, that gentle breath itching and warm. Norman Bennett lowered his voice, seemingly hiding something, gentle yet hoarse, the tone extremely forceful. I gave you the chance to leave. From now on. No more. Tilda, the person burying her head in the strong chest, responded softly, like a kitten moaning, sweet and delicate. Standing at the corridor entrance, Raymond Wood heard the door open. Inadvertently glancing over, he seemed frozen in place. What did he see? The president holding Miss Lyle's hand, and Miss Lyle didn't look unwilling. Raymond Wood hurried to greet them, and upon closer inspection, Miss Lyle seemed to have cried. Even her eye rims were red. What did the president do? Raymond Wood couldn't help but think too far. In broad daylight, a hum. President, President, Madam. Raymond Wood greeted them with a smiling face. Hearing this title, Eliana Lyle's face immediately flushed slightly. Norman Bennett naturally nodded slightly, not being moved by Raymond Wood's comically smiling face. Almost nothing could change Norman Bennett's eternal icy expression. Walking out of the corridor, everyone recognized this incredibly handsome man, the president of Harmony Group, their boss. Norman Bennett was not in a family company, but founded Harmony Group, starting with skincare product development, later venturing into film companies, plazas, clothing, and recently even acquiring a gaming company. The 3 hotel staff pushing cleaning carts stopped, starting to whisper. The girl next to President Bennett must be the eldest daughter of the Lyle family, Eliana Lyle, right? It must be. They even have an engagement. Don't know when the wedding is, it's so enviable. Another staff laughed, looking at them like a mother admiring her daughter and son-in-law, liking them more the more she looked. What's there to envy? It's just a business alliance. How would President Bennett fancy Eliana Lyle? She's dull. She's even less than me. The one speaking cast a disdainful look at Eliana Lyle's back. This remark instantly dampened the mood of the other 2 gossipers, helplessly shaking their heads. Let's go, let's go. Outside the hotel, Norman Bennett suddenly stopped, looking at the person beside him and asked, "Where do you want to go? Today I'll accompany you." Raymond Wood was stunned, thinking the president was going back to work, suddenly becoming anxious, wishing to grab the president's collar and shout, "Don't you know how much work you haven't done? Are you giving up the company?" Unfortunately, Raymond Wood didn't dare vocalize, so he could only imagine it in his heart. "I want to go." Before Eliana Lyle could finish, she saw a car stopping at the hotel entrance, followed by someone coming hurriedly to greet and help park. And the license plate of that car, even if she were blind, she could recognize it.